Oh, we're back. It's long live baseball. Where did we go? We hibernated for a long time because Mike Jones was unhappy with how the Cubs season ended, where they
Oh,
didn't make the playoffs, even though they got the manager. They stole the manager from in the division, and that he was going to be the savior, and it didn't turn out the way that many thought. And
brother.
to be fair, the Cardinals didn't do much better. So here we are. This is a show of lamenting, as Mike Jones said before the show began. This is a show of lamenting. The Dodgers get another bona fide starting pitcher, Japanese superstar, to add to their rotation. So how are you doing, Mike? Is this just going to be a pity party today, or what's going on?
Brother, please. Like that's the only reason why we haven't been on the air. I mean, I'm wondering, what might be going on in the life of one Seth Dewald that would cause us to maybe not have enough time to put a show together or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I digress. I
Yeah.
digress. Uh, well, I mean, it's January, right? This weekend is a good weekend for a Cubs fan to kick off the show again. Looking forward to spring because it's CubsCon in Chicago, Schaumburg, wherever they're holding it. I don't know, Rockford. I don't know where it's at. I should know where it's at. I should be there because I saw the former Cub players that were lined up at the introductions last night, and wow, there's like 14 Blue Jackets, which designates Hall of Famers, and that just it would be a blast, and I'm sure the people there are having a blast. Even this morning, as festivities I believe kicked off at 9 o'clock this morning. But the big news in Cubs land, of course, is Sammy Sosa.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing that it's I almost unbelievable after 20 years. 20 years.
That is so crazy. Like, explain that to me as an outside, because I don't really, obviously, I don't follow the Cubs as closely as you, but I know with the Cardinals, the former Cardinals and the history and the nostalgia of the St. Louis Cardinals is literally what the Cardinals have been selling us the last, ever since they've won a World Series in 2011. So the idea that one of your superstar players, one of the players that helped save baseball with Mark McGwire in the home run race in 1998, wouldn't be a big part of the Chicago Cubs and their festivities every year is, frankly, it boggles my mind. So explain that to me, because frankly, I don't understand.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like anything else. I mean the succinct version of helping you understand why that happened was because Sammy pissed some people off.
Okay.
He pissed the organization off. He left the game. He left the dugout prematurely and had some unkind words. And people. I don't think anybody knows exactly the reason why, but he made some mistakes, I think. And so he issued a letter of apology, apologizing to the Cubs and the organization and his teammates and things, and kind of vague letter of apology. Some people are like, "Oh, that's because he was using steroids," and other people, it's a corked bat incident. And I've also heard the story of him leaving the dugout and leaving the game, and kind of the being a prima donna and not being a good teammate and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is forgotten now. Sammy Sosa at 56 years old, 57 years old, runs out to the CubsCon crowd screaming and yelling his name, and he's running, which is more than I can do at the same age. So, it is exciting for Cubs fans because you're right. Like Sammy Sosa, and also they announced at CubsCon that he and Derek Lee are being inducted into they are the newest members of the Cubs Hall of Fame. So
Okay.
not only did they just welcome him back this year, it's like, welcome back, Sammy. We're putting you in the hall. And so, and that's exciting for Cubs fans. He's going to be, but unfortunately, okay, now we're going to get in the meat of it, right? Unfortunately,
Mm.
that might be the big news for the Cubs this offseason. Okay, yeah, signing of Kyle Tucker, yeah, that
Or
huge, right?
the trade of for Kyle Tucker,
Trade for
and talk. Let's talk about what they gave up for Kyle Tucker, because when I saw this trade go down, I initially I thought, wow, that's a really good deal for the Cubs, without having any idea of, you know, his contract long term, right?
right.
Because my understanding is he only has a one year left on his deal. So I just assumed, oh, the Cubs are going to sign that guy to a long term extension because, it's the Chicago Cubs. We're not talking about the Kansas City Royals here.
Right.
But I
You
mean,
would
this is
think. You would
legitimately
think.
one of the best hitters in baseball. And he traded the Isak Paredes, who's being passed around like a peace pipe. Hayden Wesneski, who's a nice pitcher, nice pitcher, but not, I don't think, ever going to be an impact starter. Maybe like a middle of the rotation, back end of the rotation guy long term. And then Cam Smith, I think, was the big piece in this. He was the number 73 overall prospect.
Yep.
And was he? I don't know what he was in terms of Cubs prospect, but I think he was pretty high up on the list.
Yeah, he was
Um,
high up in the list.
so, but Kyle Tucker is legitimately one of the best hitters in baseball, and I don't know personally why the Cubs wouldn't be entertaining a contract extension as soon as they traded for him. But I don't know. Is he really going to be one and done in Chicago? Because I would be shocked if that's the case.
Well, the really the thing that caused pause in Chicagoland was the recent news that the Cubs and Kyle Tucker had not come to an agreement, even for this year's salary. Um,
Oh,
they
really? I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah, it was like, okay. And I think they ended up because Tucker's camp came in at 17.5, Cubs came in at 15.5, and they did settle at 16.5. So, it happened relatively quickly, but there was a moment there where it was like, wait a minute, we traded for a guy that we haven't even agreed on the salary for, and we gave up our number 7 prospect in our list. I mean, Cam Smith had cracked the MLB's top 100. He was
Mm-hmm.
at 70 something. But he was 7 in our prospects. And then Isak Paredes, like you said, he's been a perennial all-star. Um, he's somebody's going to have to fix Paredes pull hitting. I don't know. Everything he hits is to left field. And I don't know how much of a problem that is, but yeah, it's a great signing for the Cubs. Don't get me wrong, or a trade for the Cubs. I think, with Cam Smith being the great unknown, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's been in the minors. Yeah, he's cracked the top 100, and if anything happens, if anything could be more Cub, he'll be a future All Star and Hall of Famer. Um, and we'll find that out later. But 1 year deal. Um, yeah, gosh, I don't know. You know, um, it's a good trade. It feels like the Cubs are just let's. It feels like they're tinkering. Let's tinker with this thing a little bit and see what we can do. Let's and of course, um, Bellinger to the Yankees. I mean that's other big news that I don't know that we've talked about yet on this show. Um, and so let's tinker with this and tinker with that, and we've got prospects coming up, and it feels very, very different. And this is kind of, I don't know if this was our pre-show conversation or not, but it feels very different than what's going on in LA, for example, or with the New York Mets, for example, or with the Yankees, for example. And there's just this feeling that I get like, and I don't like the feeling. Like the feeling that I get is that we're going to end up with these, um, it's the major market teams, but they're so stacked now that we're going to end up with like these top four teams that are battling it out year in and year out because they're willing to spend the money and the taxes associated with it, and they're going to get all the greatest players in baseball, and then the rest of us are going to be tinkering, and it's really, I don't know if dare I say, I'm not sure I'm willing to stick around for 162 games season to watch the same four teams end up in the freaking playoffs every year. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I'm just waiting for the Cubs to join the arms race. Because I not too
yeah,
long ago I watched the 2004 documentary of the Boston Red Sox with when Theo Epstein was the general manager there, and Jed Hoyers. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a fantastic documentary covering the Boston Red Sox who came back from 3-0 to the New York Yankees in the ALCS, and they just talked about how Boston and New York went about building their teams, and they were definitely competing for free agents. There was even a section in there where they talked about Alex Rodriguez and how he was almost a Boston Red Sox, and then he ended up agreeing. They ended up agreeing to a trade with New York, and how heartbroken Theo was. But Theo's not averse to, or Theo Epstein was not averse to making big moves and taking big risks,
right, right,
and like I think maybe the biggest risk he took was trading Nomar Garciaparra away, who
right.
was a huge star in Boston, and then you look at what happened to him afterwards, and he really didn't do that much of anything. And the two players that he got in return, Orlando Cabrera and Doug Minkiewicz, I think is how you say his last name, really shored up the defense. Cabrera provided defense at short, Minkiewicz provided defense at first. And of course, I remember that season because the Cardinals were the team that one of the, if not the best Cardinals team I've ever seen, a candidate for the best Cardinals team I've ever seen, with Albert Pujols, Scott Rowland, Jim Edmonds, all hitting. I think Jim Edmonds and Pujols hit over 40 home runs that year, had over 100 RBIs, and Scott Rowland had over 30 home runs and 100 RBIs, playing Gold Glove defense. Like Edmonds, Gold Glover, Rowland, Gold Glover. I think Albert would eventually win a Gold Glove. I think multiple Gold Gloves. I could be wrong about that. And then you, of course, not to mention Edgar Renteria, who was playing shortstop, Reggie Sanders, who was a plus bat in the outfield too. And I think 2004 was is either two. I think 2004 was the no. That would have been 2005. I think 2005 was the first year for a guy named, I don't know, Yadier Molina. I'd have to double check that. But like the Cardinals that was an amazing Cardinals team, and the Red Sox just wiped the floor with them. And but anyway, my point in saying that was Jed feels like a guy who, I don't know. Like this is a big move for Kyle Tucker, but from an outsider's perspective, and you're talking about this feeling that you have as a fan, and it's a very similar feeling to the one I've had as a Cardinals fan, where it feels like you're doing just enough to appease the fans. You're not really stepping into the arena with the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers. Well, nobody's really in that arena because that's insane. But you get what I'm trying to say here is
Yeah,
you're the Chicago Cubs, and I'm always kind of fascinated as especially as a Cardinals fan, and I know the Cardinals are a mid-market team, so they'll never be in this conversation. At least I don't think so. They're always going to have to be a draft and develop team. But I'm always fascinated that the Cubs, with Wrigley Field and that cash machine that they have, and the marquee network and all this, that they never enter that conversation. It seems it's fascinating to me because I would have thought that Kyle Tucker, the minute you trade for him, okay, what do you want? $400 million deal, $500 million deal? I don't know.
right, right.
If that's the cost of doing business, that's the cost of doing business. and you're not going to be on these other high price free agents either. So I
Yeah.
guess you're a draft and develop team, but you're somewhere in between. You're also trading for big stars. Like, are you just going to be the team that trades for big stars and lets them get signed by the Dodgers once their contract expires? I don't know.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I or the Yankees, right? Like
Or
Cody
the
Bellinger,
Yankees,
like
right?
like,
Yeah,
and so, um, and there wasn't a whole lot of news about the Bellinger to the Yankees thing. It was like,
it's kind of an afterthought. Yeah,
yeah, okay, well, Cody's gone.
yeah,
But part of the reason for that, I think, is PCA, right? I mean, PCA proved himself last year, and came along quite well, and I think will continue to grow. Now, the other part of this Tucker trade, you talk about, making the big move. The Ricketts just aren't going to do that. Like, they're conservative. I think, in their, I mean, they're financial trading people. They're investors. They're, that's who they are. TD Ameritrade or Invesco or whatever they are now. I don't know. But that's part of the DNA of the organization now. That's who owns the organization.
hmm
Even when we made the run to win the World Series in 2016, which seems like forever ago, by the way. Um, uh, Even when we made that run, it wasn't like we went out and got some superstar. We didn't feel like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets. We had some guys that got put together. And were they good? Yeah. Yeah, they were young, they were good, they played well together. Ben Zobrist, I think you'd have to say was the biggest. John Lester. I mean, those two were the biggest signings, but it wasn't like they were, uh, Juan Soto or Shohei. They just, like, doesn't feel like it's on the same caliber, right? I think they
hmm
are as players. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously they brought home a championship for us, right? They are that kind of caliber player, but when you look at them, you don't think they're going to be on the cover of MLB The Show. The closest thing we had to that, and the one who was Javi Baez, right? And look at Javi
yeah,
now, right? So,
hmm
but Kyle Tucker, the thing that excites me about the Kyle Tucker trade is that we still also have, say, a Suzuki. And so you've got Suzuki and Tucker in right, Happ in left, PCA in center. And by adding Kyle Tucker, who is better than Suzuki, Suzuki either goes to DH permanently, which he's not going to like, or you're playing those guys, you're using those guys interchangeably in that regard, right? um, Kyle Tucker's name is up there with, like, I'm looking at a stat sheet here. I think it's from, I don't know where it's from, but WAR 2021 to 24 outfielders. Okay, top outfielders. Number one is Aaron Judge. Number two is Juan Soto. Number three is Mookie Betts. Number four, Jordan Alvarez. And then number five is Kyle Tucker. So he is
hmm
up there in those names, but he's not I don't feel like Kyle Tucker's name gets thrown around like Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, you know, uh, that kind of thing. And so he was just kind of a get after it sort of guy. Kyle Tucker is a hell of an outfielder. And so
hmm
he's definitely going to contribute to the lineup. Uh, and what like I said, what I really like about it, Suzuki defensively has been questionable, and
yeah,
Tucker is solid defensively. So, there's a lot of good things that come from this trade. Now the question mark is, do we hold on to him for a while? I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, they almost had to go to arbitration for the original contract signing. So what's that going to mean next year? You know,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
questions.
yeah. As you were talking, yeah, and to me, it doesn't make hardly any sense that they wouldn't. Um, sign him, but this is what the Cubs appear to be banking on is their prospects.
Yeah,
And according to Bleacher Report, an article that was published on December 30th, even with Cam Smith being traded to the Houston Astros, who was a top 100 prospect, the Cubs still rank number 5 according to this article in baseball in terms of their prospect, and they have, according to Bleacher Report, 5 tier 1 prospects. Cade Horton, Matt Shaw, Moises Ballesteros, Owen Casey, and James Triantos. So they appear. I mean, it would be a smart way to do business if you weren't in a major market, because the idea is you want to be the Dodgers. You want to be this team that has a really good farm system and can go out and get the big names and the big stars. You
right.
want you want to have the best of both worlds, and I think I've always thought that that's possible in Chicago, and that's honestly been my biggest fear as a St. Louis Cardinals diehard. So the fact that you're not doing it, and the fact that you appear to be haggling over let's face it, $2 million in this case, which obviously to you and me, $2 million is life changing, but to a baseball team, it's a drop in the bucket. It just feels like I for lack of a better way to say it, beneath the Cubs to do something like that. I don't know, and
Yeah,
maybe it's smart, to get the most value for your dollar. Maybe, I mean, that's smart on the face of it, but not when you're the Chicago Cubs, and that's something that's always baffled me. So again, you can look at the depth chart and you would know it better than I do. And there's talk of them signing a third baseman, which we can talk about as well. But as of right now, it's my understanding Matt Shaw is at least going to compete for
yeah.
the third base job. Cade Horton, I would assume he's in the conversation for being in the rotation. I would think. I'm not sure. It would appear that Owen Casey is just going to have to wait because Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki are probably going to play the outfield. Um, I don't know. I don't know for sure. And then you go down to their tier 2 prospects. Like you have Kevin Alcantara, Jefferson Rojas, Jackson Wiggins, or that he's a tier 3 according to this article. But you get what I'm saying. Like the Cubs are pretty loaded with their prospects, and there's not going to be room for all of these guys at the major league level. So you would think at some point something has to give here,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
There's two things that what you said that makes me think of, um, there's two sides of me. There's the feeling side of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like this, and then there's the practical side of me, and from a practicality side, the way that they're doing things in Chicago, to me, there is something that is kind of strangely consistent about the types of players that the Cubs acquire. Um, uh, and I don't know how else to categorize it, but Craig Counsell, Kyle Tucker, Dansby Swanson, um, Pete Crow Armstrong, um, Bellinger, all of these guys are like steady eddies, right? They all seem to be steady eddies. There's no real volatile. Doesn't feel they're kind of conservative choices. These are guys that are going to come out and produce. They're going to, that kind of thing. They're not going to You don't feel like they're guys that are going to bounce around a major, like to the Mets, to the Dodgers, to the where's Juan Soto going to go? Is he going to be in Citi Field? Is he going to be at the Yankees? Is he going to be with the Dodgers? Where's he going to sign? People aren't necessarily going to say that about a Kyle Tucker. They're not going to say that about a Ben Zobrist. Throw Ben Zobrist in the mix with that too as a steady Eddie, right? Like these kind of Matt Shaw, Owen Casey, Nico Horner. So from a practicality side, you're like, these guys are baseball players. Like they're solid baseball players. They're going to go out and they're going to produce for you day in, day out over the course of 162 games. Um, um, Whereas when you talk about guys like Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, um, you know, uh, I don't know who else you throw in the mix there. Fernando Tatis, you know, uh, are those guys steady eddies, or are they like, Javi Baez's who like coming flat? Are they
Yeah.
going to last in the long term? Those are the kinds of things that I don't know. There's a feeling about that. I don't know if there's a practicality with the Cubs and I don't know if practicality is even the right word. Maybe conservative is the right word. You know what I mean? In the
Yeah.
choices that they're making, because certainly Juan Soto is a huge splash, right? That would be wow. That would be a huge move, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it'd also be taking a lot of risk potentially. I think you're paying so much for, and that's kind of what we see the Cubs do. They pass on the guys that are the big risks, and they pick up the steady Eddie guys. And even with the World Series, that's kind of what they did there. Like you know, Rizzo. You know, with, everybody knew Rizzo was a good baseball player. Was he
Mm-hmm.
like was he like the superstar player? No, not no. It was you get what I'm saying? I mean, it just seems like um, they don't necessarily. Sometimes they've the history of the Cubs is they've been recently is that they've developed some of these regular Joes into superstar players, and then said, "Okay, we've had our time with you,
Yeah.
and now you're moving on." So I don't know. It's kind of a weird feeling because from the feeling standpoint, yes, bring me Shohei Ohtani, you know, bring me Aaron Judge, bring me Juan Soto, bring me Mookie Betts, bring from a feeling standpoint. But when you get down to business, they might be making the right decisions, for the long term of the organization.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for patience. And my point in saying you bringing up the prospects and it gives you flexibility. Not all these guys are going to be on the major league roster, but some of them will. And then it gives you. I mean, let's face it. Come MLB trade deadline time, teams are going to be interested in what the Cubs have to offer. And that puts you in a position of strength. And when
Right.
these other teams are depleting their farm system, and I know the Yankees are far down that list, according to Bleacher Report, it puts the Cubs in a position of strength, and it is smart. But I'll say this: the Dodgers are still number 8 on that list. So the Dodgers somehow still have all these top prospects to offer as well, and you see the Dodgers make moves to bolster their farm system at times as well. So it's the great balance, that we're talking about here, and I think it's entirely possible with the Cubs. Something you mentioned also, because brought this to mind, because it's been a while since I've thought about the Cubs bullpen, and you could argue that if the Cubs had a stronger bullpen last year, they would have won the NL Central. Because I don't know exactly how many saves they blew, but it was tops in all of Major League Baseball.
Right. Right.
But the Cubs have quietly
Hmm.
overhauled their bullpen.
Right.
And I'm just looking at some of these names, and I don't know, you know, I don't know these guys from the pair of shoes I haven't worn in 3 years in the closet. Like Tyson Miller came in a trade in May of 24, so that was during last season, I guess. Nate Pearson, a trade in July of 24, so during last season. But Eli Morgan comes in a trade November 2024. Caleb Thielbar signed as a free agent from Minnesota. Um, so again, that's 4 new names in the bullpen that are projected to be critical members of the bullpen. Setup guys, middle relievers. And I'm still thinking, because right now, according to Fangraphs, Porter Hodge is projected to be the closer. I still don't necessarily see, unless Porter Hodge can develop into a lockdown closer, which I don't honestly know much about Porter Hodge. It feels as though the Cubs could be the trade piece that they're waiting on, is the guy who can lock things down in the ninth inning. I don't know. But quietly though, they're making smart moves to fortify or at least throw quantity at the bullpen that was really bad last year. So I mean, I agree with your sentiment, but on the other hand, I think this is the Cubs. They should be doing more. They should be doing more. you
Right,
know?
right, right. And sorry about the idiot dog in the background here, if you can hear him
No,
barking.
that's all right. That's
Uh,
okay.
but
We'll clean it
you
up
know,
in post.
what this means is, and that the postman's here, and the other quiet acquisitions that the Cubs have made, not only for the bullpen or for the starting rotation, and that's Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray, who came
Yeah.
from the Brewers. And so, while we don't know a lot of these names like Cody Podit and Matt Fiesta and Eli Morgan, who are going to be, coming into the bullpen to solidify things, there's a lot of names there. Like, think about that. Caleb Thielbar, Rob's I can't say the Z name. Zastry, I can't say it. I don't know. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Zastryzny. There's no vowels. There are no vowels in that name. How can you have a name with no vowels?
I don't know.
Somebody help me. Zastransky. There you go. Zastransky. That's what we'll call him. We'll call him Z. Matt Fiesta, Eli Morgan, Cody Podit. So there's your bullpen, building up the bullpen. And Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray are probably in the rotation with Jamison Taillon, Justin Steele, and Shota Imanaga. So,
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, and all of that, like you mentioned, seems to be a quiet kind of thing going on in the background. Again, conservative, no big splashes, no big, big signing, no, it just, it's just kind of quietly happening. And I feel like that's kind of the thing that happened in Milwaukee, when our manager was there. It just
Yeah.
kind of quietly happened. It was like, how in the hell do Brewers get to be so good?
Well,
Like,
and they're still doing it. They're still doing it without him too.
yeah,
So it
absolutely.
but the difference there is it's not you're not the Brewers. The whole appeal of coming to the Cubs would be you have much more money to spend, but it would appear as though you're not spending it. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah, I get you. I get you.
so it and I'm looking at the payrolls right now. According to Spotrax or however you say it, the total payroll for the Cubs, they rank 12th right now, and obviously a lot can change because these rosters aren't necessarily set yet. We're recording this on January 18th. I'll just list off the top spenders. All right, so Philadelphia is actually number one at 279 million. Yankees, then the Dodgers. I can't believe the Dodgers are not number one. Maybe it'll change after this latest acquisition. Then the Mets, then Houston
Huh.
is actually fifth. Then Texas, then Toronto, then San Diego, then Atlanta, then the Angels. Oh my gosh. Imagine being an Angels fan. And then Arizona, then Chicago. And then, San Francisco, Boston, Baltimore, Seattle, Minnesota, and then we get to the Cardinals, who are 18th on that list right now. But I would never expect the Cubs to be outside the top 10. And I'm not saying spend money for the sake of spending money, because Lord knows the Cardinals have done that in recent history. Like, oh, let's bring in Lance Lynn and try to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound that is the starting rotation. But like, I at some level, you do have to spend money. And I think it would be wise to spend money on a superstar caliber player to keep them around for. And it just feels like the Cubs are trying to find the bargain bin superstar. you know. And
Uh-huh.
it's such a thing does not exist. I'll just reveal the mystery right now. So I don't know.
But at the same time, again, I know you have that feeling, but Dansby Swanson's not a bargain bin superstar. Dansby he's a superstar. Kyle Tucker is not a
No, he
bargain.
doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't play like a superstar.
Well,
He's never really hit like a superstar. But I
he
see what you. I get your sentiment.
he played like. First of all, Dansby Swanson was playing hurt last year. And,
Okay.
and I think a lot of us didn't know that. He had off-season surgery this off-season. And there's not a lot of talk about what it was or anything like that. So that's interesting to me. If I had to guess, it was a hernia.
Okay.
A hernia of some sort. I don't know, but that's just a completely wild guess based on absolutely no facts. Kyle Tucker is a superstar.
We're gonna have
Kyle
to get.
Tucker is a superstar.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get a drop. That's just a guess based on absolutely no facts. But
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
that's what this show's all about, isn't it? I mean,
I,
it's about
I
talking
guess
baseball.
so.
It's about talking baseball.
Yeah. So
But
for his career, yeah, go ahead. Keep
no, go
going.
ahead. Go ahead.
For his career, according to Baseball Reference, he's a 252 hitter. Um, Around you're talking like on his best in his best seasons 22, 25, 27 home runs, your 80, 90 RBIs. If he plays above average defense, which is I believe is what he's known for, then that's a really really good player,
Right.
potential all-star. So yeah, I mean, if you throw enough of those guys together, I suppose you have a really good team. And I think the Cubs are going to be a really good team. And if you're asking me right now, they'd be my pick to win the division. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but and they have the ammunition to basically trade for whoever they want to trade for. They just traded for Kyle Tucker, and they still have the number 5 uh, prospect pool in baseball.
Right.
But you're just kind of it almost feels, and this is the optimistic viewpoint here. It almost feels like they're waiting for the right opportunity with a young talented superstar, whoever that might be, or a player that wants to be in Chicago who's willing to take a lot of money but maybe not the I don't know, $500 million contract. And it just feels like they're doing the best that they can to put a really good baseball team on the field. And I would argue it would have been a playoff team if it had not been for the fatal flaw of the team, which ended up being the bullpen.
Bullpen, yeah.
But the tricky thing about the bullpen is, and you know this from watching baseball for years, a bullpen's good until it's not.
Right.
And yeah, Ryan Helsley was really good last year. There's no guarantee that he's going to be the same player this year, which is why I'm flabbergasted that the Cardinals in a rebuilding in quotes year, which is a word they won't say, in a rebuilding year, they're not apparently going to trade him. But like it's just I think the approach of we're not going to overspend in the bullpen is not a terrible approach. And I think the thing that I keep coming back to is, but you're the Cubs and you can afford to take risks that other teams wouldn't necessarily take. So that's kind of where I sit when I think about the Cubs is I think yes, what they're doing is smart, but at times I think they're just too conservative for their own good, and that sometimes you just, and I get it, they have big contracts on their ledger, and you could say that they have taken those risks, but I'm talking like let's sign Kyle Tucker because that would not only be getting a superstar player, and I think Kyle Tucker's one of the best players in baseball on your team for the duration of his career, or at least the better years of his career. But you're also sending a message to your fan base that you say we're not going to spend money, like, which is not true, by the way. The Cubs have spent money in the past. This is a big signal that we want to compete with the Dodgers and the Mets. We might not be spending as much money as them, but we're willing to make bigger moves to make that happen. I think Kyle Tucker's the guy. Like, if you're going to pay anybody that amount of money, it would be a Kyle Tucker level player. So that I
Yeah.
think that's my point.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to go back to 2015, 2016. to see what the Cubs were spending when they were beating the Dodgers in the
Yeah.
playoffs, and how much were the Dodgers spending at that time. The other thing that I do like about what the Cubs are doing, and I don't know, maybe I'm too much of a glass half full kind of guy. I was listening to the PBP this morning, one of the best podcasts about radio broadcasting, and I was listening to that, and how radio broadcasters walk this fine line between being cup half full announcers, everything's rosy, and being
Yeah.
critical of a team that's struggling and that kind of thing. But what I really do like about what the Cubs are doing too is that they seem to be depth seems to be something that they're after. And I think
Mm-hmm.
depth is so important in baseball because of potential injuries and things of that nature. And that's part of what we did in 2015, 2016 was built upon that depth at various, with Grandpa Rossi, and we had depth at the catching position. We had depth at, different positions. Anyway, what the Cubs are doing, all those pitchers that we just talked about being potentially in the bullpen and in the starting rotation. Here's one name that I haven't even mentioned: Javier Assad, still
Yeah.
with the Cubs,
Mm-hmm.
was a starting guy for us last year. Had like a 3.73 ERA last season. I don't know how many games he appeared in, but he was on the mound quite a bit. And that's a guy that we're not even talking about in the starting rotation potentially with the additions of Colin Ray and Boyd. And so where's he at? Where's he fit in? Is he going to be coming out of the bullpen? And then other names like you mentioned, Tyson Miller, Keegan Thompson, Julian Merriweather. Um, so it feels like, wow, we're adding to the bullpen, and we've already got a lot of guys in the bullpen. But to me, what that does is it creates a competitiveness for positions. And I think in professional sports, that's key. Like, like, say a Suzuki, he needs someone to push him because he needs to play better. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think that having that depth is huge, and it gives you options as well. And so I like that, and so I like the direction that the Cubs are heading. I mean, I think we're trending in the right direction on all fronts. While fans are out there, like you say, I think dying for who's the big signing, going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm okay with it. Stay the course, keep doing what we're doing. We're gonna have a good ball club. We're gonna be competitive. And it doesn't take much then come trade deadline time to say, okay, what's our missing piece? Let's make it happen.
Yep.
And that's when you know, that's when you make the big move, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so I like that idea because you make that big move right now. Go ahead, have your $600 million player at the beginning of the season, and God forbid, but and then he sprains his back on a routine play on the 53rd game of the season, and
Mm-hmm.
where you at? You
Yeah.
know, so I'm all right.
Yeah. So can we talk now? We've talked enough about the Cubs.
No, I think we should just end the show. The Cardinals.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
not
well,
really
first,
interested in the rest of
b-
it.
before we end the show, let's talk about what the Cardinals have done this offseason. And
Hey, can I start off that conversation?
that's about it. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to start off that conversation with this little nugget. Did you know that the Cardinals are one of 6 teams in the major leagues to not to sign a Major League Baseball free agent this season?
I did not know that until just now.
Yep. So
It does not
pitchers,
surprise it does not surprise me because as I'm looking at Fangraphs, and I told you I've been paying attention to the St. Louis Cardinals, but to be honest with you, ever since the Nolan Arenado rejected the trade and all this nonsense about him, I think he posted something on social media implying that he wanted to play for the Dodgers, and I can't help but think, why would the Dodgers want you to play for, like, don't the Dodgers have like three good third basemen? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know honestly enough about the Dodgers really to know their route. I guess I could pull it up right now, but you get the point. Like
Yeah.
are you even good enough anymore to start for the Dodgers on a regular basis? Right now, Max Muncy is going to play, or is projected to play third base for them, and I don't know.
And he's a beast, by the way. Max Muncy is a beast.
Yeah, he's a really good player,
Yeah.
and Nolan Arenado has been an average player. His WRC plus is 102,
Do you
which
remember
is
how
pretty
excited
average.
you remember how excited you were when Nolan Arenado was coming to St. Louis?
Well,
Yeah.
they
Old
gave
Schmidt.
up hardly anything to, yeah, those two, and it really is the end of an era, and an era that the Cardinals, Cardinals fans really thought the Cardinals could compete, for not just to win divisions but to win World Series. And I'll say, like, initially it was good. Initially, that 2022. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Paul Goldschmidt won the MVP, and Nolan Arenado in 2022. I just mentioned WRC plus, or yeah, WRC plus in 2022. Well, I'm going to mention a different stat now because I can't see WRC plus now, but OPS plus 151, which is unbelievable. He hit 30 home runs, 103 RBIs in 2022, and he finished third in the MVP race. Nolan Arenado did. But ever since that 2022 season, 2023 OPS plus 108, and this past year in 2024 OPS plus 101. So he's been much closer to an average player. I know he gives you a lot defensively, although that's also been slipping, but 2023, 26 home runs, 93 RBIs, and then this past year, 16 home runs and 71 RBIs. So the saga with Nolan Arenado and the fact that the Cardinals are probably eventually going to trade him is all a salary dumping move, because the Cardinals are not going to get much for him. Sure, the name has cachet. He can play plus defense at third base if that's what you need, but the salary just doesn't make any sense for any team unless the Cardinals are going to take the majority or at least a good portion of that contract. So this whole trade situation, it's got to happen because the Cardinals really need to play Nolan Gorman at third base. If this is really a youth movement, then that's what they need to do. And that puts the Cardinals in a terrible position if they're trying to extract as much value out of Nolan Arenado as they possibly can, because they're not in a good position to begin with the contract, and just with the contract alone. But getting back to the original point, Mike, it started off great. And then the Cardinals, Albert Pujols had one of the most magical seasons I can remember any player having in the history of baseball. I mean, can you imagine going back to your former team where you really made your hay as a player? And I know he had some decent years with the Angels, but nothing like what he had with the Cardinals. And having the kind of season that he had, playing with Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina and The Last Dance and an MVP candidate and another MVP candidate, and then getting knocked out in the first round to the Philadelphia Phillies because your manager mismanaged that one game. You could really point back to that game as being the genesis of the Ollie Marmol hatred amongst Cardinal fans. You really could.
Uh-huh.
So, like, that
Is there
was
a
just,
hatred? Is there a hatred?
oh yeah. Yeah, it's that, like, the Cardinals fans want him gone, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Wow, I didn't
The
realize that was so.
Cardinals, well, John Mozeliak, this will be his last year, but yeah, I've never seen in the history of the St. Louis Cardinals anybody, like, nobody was saying fire Mike Matheny, at least not that I remember. I don't think anybody was saying fire Shill, like chants or
Right.
screaming it from the fan. Like every time I go to a Cardinals baseball game, multiple times from multiple different people, fire Ollie, get him out of
Wow.
here. Yeah, like they're done. Like Cardinal, and it's really not his fault at all because the starting, like you could blame most of this on John Mozeliak's just terrible managing of the farm system and of the starting pitching rotation, because that's really where the Cardinals have, again, they haven't been developing their own starting pitching. And if you're not willing to pay or overpay for starting pitching in Major League Baseball, you're going to have a problem. Now they did sign Sonny Gray, and that's worked out really well for the Cardinals, but Steven Matz has not worked out. Miles Michaelis has not worked out, and to this point, Eric Fetty's been okay, but at this point, as a Cardinals fan, what I want them to do is to make a decision, is to commit to something. And it feels like they are committing to doing nothing.
Hey,
And that is a choice in and of itself. We all know committing to doing absolutely nothing is the most frustrating position possible, because if this really is, and they won't say the words, if it really is a rebuild, then there are some pretty obvious trade candidates. And I'm not even talking about Nolan Arenado. The obvious trade candidates are, if you want, fine. If you want to keep Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras, that's fine. I have no problem keeping those guys. But Eric Fetty, who's on a 1 year, has just one more year left on his deal and would be a nice, rotation piece for some team. Ryan Helsley, probably the most obvious trade candidate in the history of trade candidates, coming off his best season as a player, as a closer, as a lockdown closer, and oh, by the way, he's 30 years old, going to be 31 by the end of the season. I mean, if you could get rid of Miles Michaelis, like if you could trade him for a laundry machine, I would do it just to dump that contract. There are some pretty obvious names that you need to be trading away, in my opinion. I think Helsley and Fetty are at the top of that list. Obviously, Nolan Arenado needs to be traded. Paul Goldschmidt has already signed with the Yankees. But if this really is a youth movement, and I like a lot of the Cardinals' young players and their potential, but you have to figure out what you have at some point. You can't just keep Tink Hence in the minor leagues forever. And the Cardinals, they're 20th on this list here that I referenced earlier on Bleacher Report, with Tink Hence, J.J. Weatherholtz, Quinn Matthews as tier one prospects. But you have to figure out what you have in Quinn Matthews. At some point, you have to figure out what you have in Tink Hence. At some point, Tekoa Roby, Jimmy Crooks. The Cardinals have actually really good depth in their minor leagues at catcher. So, and Thomas Sajaci needs to play this year if this really is a youth movement. But I think the frustrating thing is you want them to pick a lane. You want them to do something. They're obviously not going to be serious contenders, at least with payroll, because they're cutting payroll. So let's see the young kids play. If we're really going to see the young kids play, let's play Nolan Gorman at third base every day and see what happens. Let's play Jordan Walker in the outfield every day and see what happens. Let's see what Victor Scott can do in the outfield or as a bench piece. And I like the approach with what they're projected to do with their bench, because it's Sajaci, it's Siani, it's right now Nolan Gorman is projected to be. I don't see a world where he's just a bench utility player, but like let's see what we have, and maybe we can uncover some diamonds in the rough. Like, what do you have to lose? The only way this doesn't happen is if you keep all these, like if you just fill the rotation with guys that are not going to be on the team long term, and it's just driving me insane. Like, why are we not doing anything? It's almost like Mozeliak just doesn't want to mess up in his last year and make another awful trade.
So pitchers and catchers report in less than a month. And to your point, and because I like to see you get your ire up, not
Yeah.
only not only are the Cardinals one of six teams not to sign a free agent, to a fully guaranteed contract, but they have yet to make a trade to start the transition period. That,
Yeah.
like, to your point, they are doing nothing now. I do want to ask you about this though, because
Hmm.
while you say they're doing nothing, if I can find my deal here, let's see. The Cardinals have agreed to terms with three of their players: Ryan
Yep.
Helsley, Jojo Romero, and John King.
Yep.
Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, Andre Palante likely headed to arbitration. Um, so it's not that they're doing nothing. They're
Yeah.
they're holding the line. It sounds like they're holding the line, third in the
Yeah.
National League Central, and we're okay.
Well, yeah, and the only way that there's upside to this situation is if you play the younger players. We have a reasonably good idea if Nolan Arenado plays third base in 2025 of what we're going to get. You know, he's going to play good defense. He's probably going to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 home runs, maybe drive in 70 or 80 runs, but he's just not like I guess there could be a resurgence and maybe the Cardinals are thinking to themselves, well, like maybe we get that resurgence and then we can trade him because the contract does get better over time. The Cardinals will be on the hook for $21 million this year in 2025, and then it goes down 16 million and then 15 million. So it's not an unbearable contract in the way that some people think it is, but it's still a lot of money, and you need to make room for some of these younger players. If like I think the player that's most affected if the Cardinals don't move off of Arenado is obviously Nolan Gorman, because like you start to look at the Cardinals and their team. Okay, Mason Wynn is slotted in at shortstop. Wilson Contreras is apparently going to play first base. Brendan Donovan is probably going to play second, although I think he could play third as well. Uh, you know,
Wait. Did you say Contreras at first?
yeah, you didn't know this?
I had not heard this yet.
Yeah, Wilson Contreras is going to play first base for the Cardinals now that Goldschmidt is gone, and that I actually like it. It opens up catcher for Ivan Herrera, who was one of our better hitters. Um,
Wasn't Jordan Walker a first baseman?
no, he was a third baseman in the
Okay, I had the
minors,
wrong
and
phone.
they moved him to outfield
Outfield.
with
Yeah.
no outfield instructor in the minor leagues. But that's a whole nother separate conversation
Uh,
of the Cardinals' ineptitude over the last several years. But yeah, so you're just and if Nolan Arenado has to play third base. My point is, where's Nolan Gorman going to play if you want to play Brendan Donovan every day at second, which is where Nolan Gorman was playing? He has to be a DH. Oh, wait a second. If he's a DH, Alec Burleson is probably going to DH some. I would assume Jordan Walker is probably going to DH some. So it limits what you can do with a player like Nolan Gorman, who you really need to figure out if you can fix him. And I think he's fixable, but you have to give him the opportunity to play every day, even as frustrating as that might be at times. And that doesn't I don't see that happening if Nolan Arenado is on the team. So that's I think a big deal, and why the Cardinals are in just a terrible situation trying to trade him away. And like the Cardinals just I feel do this thing where it's like, okay, if we're not going to get enough value, we're going to sit on our hands and do nothing. But you're kind of in a position where you can't do nothing, like you're kind of in a situation where, in essence, you're not going to get a lot. You kind of just have to take what you can get and to make way for some of these younger guys. And the same is true with the rotation. Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, and Steven Match, you know who they are. You don't know who Tink Hence is. You don't necessarily know what you have in Quinn Matthews. These guys need opportunity and they need reps. And you also need more pieces that you can develop in the minor leagues. So I don't know, Mike. I don't understand the inaction, to be honest with you. I've always been a guy who's believed in being proactive as an organization. and the Cardinals are in a mess of their own creating, and the only way to get out of it is to start making moves. To which point they haven't done that. So I don't really know what else to say. I feel like it's that meme. I don't know if you've seen it online where it's that guy poking the something, and it
Yeah,
just says "do something."
right.
And that's how I feel about the St. Louis Cardinals right now, because it's obvious to me and a lot of other Cardinals fans the situation that you're in. Now you just need to make something happen. And to be fair, they did have a trade with Houston, which Nolan Arenado blocked. For what reason, I have no idea. And like the no trade clause does limit what they can again do with Nolan Arenado. But and I just there's every possibility that there are teams that just don't want him. Like that's also true. So it makes it even trickier. So to be fair to the Cardinals, in that situation, like that's fair. But when it comes to these other valuable pieces, you can't tell me that you couldn't have gotten two or three top prospects for Ryan Helsley right now. That's the
Right.
most obvious move that needs to be made, in my opinion. And I know some Cardinals fans are not going to agree with me, but he's a 30-year-old closer. I've seen this story play out before, and coming off his best season, his value's not going to get any higher.
And
Like
do you think the Cardinals are just waiting with him for the trade I mean, waiting for July, hoping
that's
that he comes in and has continues where he left off, and then you
that
think,
is such a
oh,
scary proposition, because what if he gets hurt? What if
oh,
he
I
like
know.
I don't know. But how much higher can his value get, Mike? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. I don't know.
No, I'm not. But what is it? What have the Cardinals done that has made sense over the last several years? That's my question. Like what moves have they made that have really okay? Hey, you know we want to, and all of this to say the Cubs and the Cardinals finished with the identical records last year.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so, we're kind of making it sound like, well, the Cardinals are, they really suck. And well, that's where the Cubs are. I mean, we're on the same plane in the National League Central. Let's really talk about it. Like, that's where we're at. The Cubs have made
Yeah.
moves
Yeah.
during the off season. That's the difference right now, right? We're
Yeah.
going to have a different team. What your team is going to be pretty much the same, right?
Well, that's
I mean,
I
by
mean,
all moves.
like yeah, no, it's cuz the inaction actually makes you wonder, are the Cardinals actually talking themselves into, maybe we can win the Central? Well, what if Steven Matz, is healthy for the first time in his whole life? What if Miles Michaelis has a bounce back season? What if Eric Fetty is as good as he was before we traded for him? Sonny Gray. What if we get something out of one of these younger guys in our bullpen? They lost. I can't even think of his name. I think the Phillies signed him, Kittredge. So he's gone. Goldschmidt's gone. But for the most part, you look at the lineup and you go, yeah, that's pretty similar to what they were rolling out last year. And I would argue the bench is better because you don't have Matt Carpenter and Brendan Crawford on the bench for God knows what reason they brought those guys in for. You have Siani, who's a nice player, projected to be on the bench. Victor Scott, projected to be with the big club. And at the very least, he can steal some bases for you as a pinch runner. She said JC is a very interesting piece. Pedro Pages is a nice defensive backup catcher. And then you look at the bullpen. Ryan Fernandez had a nice year. Ryan Helsley, we all know what he can do. Jojo Romero was good last year. So there's some pieces here that you go, are the Cardinals really talking themselves into, can we be a contender? Because to your point, last year they won 83 games with a lot going wrong. And I honestly hope that's not the case, but because I would like to see the Cardinals rebuild their minor league system and start that process this year as opposed to waiting another year. And I would assume Kyle Bloom, that's what he would want as well. And who knows, maybe they are waiting for the trade deadline for some of these moves. Maybe the value just isn't there yet. I don't know, but like I would like to see this process start now because in my estimation, the Cardinals don't match up to what the Cubs have or the Brewers have or maybe even the Reds have in the division. So
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you say that because with two teams with identical records and with the moves that we made, I remember reading a stat, or I don't know, not really a stat, but the Cubs with Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, and Kyle Tucker have 3 first-round draft picks from the 2015 draft, and so there's this balance between great kind of veteran players, and prospects and bringing them along. And that's something else that I like with the Cubs. I don't know how your feelings on that with the Cardinals are. There would seem to be a similar thing with Arenado and, some of the veteran guys that you've had around for a while, plus your youth movement. And maybe that's just something that happens in baseball, I mean,
yeah.
this is how the business is run. And so it's really nothing to be talking about, but it's who the people are, I guess. That's the big thing.
Yeah, and another reason why they have to trade Arenado is do you think he's really going to be the happiest guy in the locker room
Oh my God.
every day with all those younger players? I mean, he was not really a leader in the clubhouse to begin with, and now all of his buddies are gone. I mean, I can't. Obviously, I'm not in the locker room, but you would think you would be around all these other players, and I'm just gonna list you the ages of these guys. So Nolan Arenado's going to be 34 years old. Wilson Contreras, I guess, is 32, going to be 33. But then Mason Wynn, 22 years old. Alec Burleson, 26. Brendan Donovan, 28. Lars Nootbaar, 27. Jordan Walker, 22. Ivan Herrera, 24. Victor Scott, 23. It's a lot of younger players. And then you go to the bench. Pedro Pages, 26. Gorman, 24. Sajasi, 22. Siani, 25. Who Siani feels like he's been around the league forever. So it's a lot of younger players. There's a few, like there's Contreras who's in his 30s, and then that's it. Like
Yeah.
it's like it really feels like the big ball to drop is Nolan Arenado, and not to harp on this forever, but I believe the Cardinals have to trade him, and it puts them in a terrible situation with his no trade clause and the fact that teams know that they have to trade Nolan Arenado to make room for some of these younger players. So it's just the Cardinals are in a tough spot, but it's a spot of their own making with a lot of this stuff. So anyway, and you remember all those years I was screaming for the Cardinals like to pay for a starting pitcher to pair with Adam Wainwright when Adam Wainwright was still in the prime of his career, and they just, there's always half measures, and they would never make that big trade or make that big signing, and it was just I always felt like for years the Cardinals just needed one more guy in that starting rotation to go into a playoff series with, and the Cardinals were making it work in 2022 with I think it was Jose Quintana was their opening day starter. And where's Jose Quintana now? I think he's with the Mets, but yeah, they just didn't have the horses ever with starting pitching. And you look at when they won the World Series, they had Adam Wainwright and Chris Carpenter,
Right.
like
Right.
as their duo, and Chris Carpenter really was just a stud. So
Yeah.
we'll see. It's the Cardinals' season is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a season of figuring things out, hopefully, and I do believe a Nolan Arenado trade is going to happen at some point. But
You feel like that's looming.
yeah, I do.
Yeah. I've heard Boston Red Sox. I mean, well, I think he came out and said, he wouldn't block that to play for the
Yeah,
Red Sox or whatever. But
yeah, and yeah,
but
and
I
so
think
yeah,
I think the question remains though, like who's going to want it? I mean,
Yeah.
that I like, and sometimes you feel that way about guys, right? I mean, you talk about the
Hmm.
ages of your players and that sort of thing. And it's interesting when I look at least last year's fan graphs, that's the best place to find ages on there. Dansby Swanson at 30 was the was the aging veteran, you know, and
Yeah.
and, and that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
Ian Happ's only 29. Nico Horner's 27. These guys have got a few years ahead of them, I think. So that's something to look forward to as a Cubs fan, anyway.
Yeah. Um, so we'll see, but yeah, the Cardinals inaction is very frustrating because they definitely have some trade chips. They're just not willing to trade them away.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it time for the segment that is
Oh my goodness, sweeping the
sweeping?
land. I mean, is it,
Yeah,
is it still sweeping the land though?
I don't. We haven't done it in a long time.
It's been a while. I don't even know. Like you're gonna. Oh hey, look at that! Right back here by Golly.
I've got mine.
Look what I found. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, dust it off.
Huh. It's been a
Where are
while.
we?
Hey, I want to know from our fans eventually when we actually air this is
Mm-hmm.
did they miss us?
Yeah, we still have like over 500 subscribers on YouTube, so they haven't unsubscribed.
Well, that's good. They're
Yeah,
probably wondering why we haven't been on lately.
yeah,
What's
probably
a good
why.
answer for that?
Well, I had a kid, and
Ah, that might
yeah,
have something to do with
yeah,
it.
and
Yeah.
I, things have been nuts, but yeah, we'll get. I feel like we'll get back into the swing of it,
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. I like it.
So yeah,
Maybe every other week for a couple weeks while baseball approaches, and then you know how it is.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, what page are we looking at?
I
Have you
don't,
figured it out
no,
yet? Have we subsequently stalled enough for you to figure it out?
let's just open to a page. What do you say to that? Let's open. Give me a page number.
Let's see, 582.
582. Here we go.
And the first thing that I caught, I have a book and it just says no book at the top.
No book.
And no book in baseball is a lack of information on the habits and weaknesses of a particular player, manager, or team. And I would assume that you would say there's no book on certain player X.
Yeah.
Like there's no book on, Steve Johnson from the we don't really have a record of what his strengths and weaknesses are, but he's a young, spry rookie from AAA Memphis or
Well,
whatever.
now you got a book. Now you got a book. You said he's young and spry.
Yeah, I guess so. You got the beginnings of a book, but you don't have the pages have not been written.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, I'd like to know the book on Tink. What's his last name?
Tink Hence.
That
Tink
that right
Hence.
there, that right there is a
Mm-hmm.
great baseball name.
Yep.
Tink Hence. We should do an entire segment on the best names in baseball. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that'd be good. No
Pee
book.
Pee Wee Reese is probably a good one. Pee Wee
That's got to
Reese.
be up there. We should do it. You remember when Letterman? I don't know. Do you remember? Do you know who Dave Letterman is?
Of course, I know who David
Did,
Letterman
did,
is.
did you ever watch David Letterman? Whoa, jeez, what
Whoa.
happened? Wow,
Earthquake.
wow. What did you
Fell.
know? David Letterman? Did you ever watch his show Late Night with
Oh
David Letterman?
yeah. Oh yeah. I remember the our my dad's favorite segment from that show was greatest moments in presidential speeches,
Yes.
where they would every night would be a different thing, that dumb thing that George Bush would say, like strategery or something. Or like he would start the segment going like with FDR, the only thing we have to
Yeah.
fear is fear it, like all these great
Yeah.
moments, like JFK saying, ask not what your country can do for you,
Yeah.
ask what you can do for your country. And then it would pan to George Bush saying something like, well, I think we're having burritos for lunch, and then that would be it.
Burritos for lunch is a good option. I don't know why
Oh,
you make fun of that. I mean, anytime you have anything with a tortilla on
yeah.
it, corn tortillas or flour.
I think it's got to be corn tortilla.
Yeah, I think I if I'm in a Mexican restaurant, which by the way, you notice how Mexican restaurants always have 32-page menus, and basically everything on the menu is rice, beans, and some type of chicken, steak, or shrimp, and it's just put into a different format. So I'd like to go to a Mexican restaurant where they just have it says pick what you want, just one page. It's got all their margaritas listed, and
Yeah.
then it says and tequilas, and then it says uh, shrimp, steak, or chicken, and tell us how you want it.
I usually just go for a burrito, man. It's hard
Yeah,
to beat a
the
burrito at a
burrito, like I said, solid choice.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is
So,
the content that our people come for. You do know this, right?
oh yeah, of course. Of course.
Anything else on page 582 that sticks out on you? Sticks out
Well,
there?
there's like a no-hitter jinx,
Oh, that's the one I was drawn to.
an old superstition that if one speaks of a no-hit game while it is in progress, it will come to an end. For example, an opposing player will get a hit.
That's
It
how a
became
no hitter comes.
standard practice in baseball not to mention a no hitter to the pitcher after 5 innings. It seems that Red Barber was the first to defy the jinx from the broadcast booth. Barber wrote, according to Christian Science Monitor, October 31st, 1988. My first major league broadcast was opening day, 1934, Chicago Cubs at Cincinnati. I love stories like this.
Yes.
Lon Warnecki of the Cubs didn't give up a hit until one man was out in the ninth. I had never heard of the fifth inning jinx, so I broadcast Warnecki's mastery as he performed it. From my first encounter with the jinx, I never respected it.
Now, how do you feel about the jinx? That brings up like in the fifth inning jinx. I'm not sure. Like
Yeah,
I've always like you don't talk about a no hitter ever. I don't
no.
care if you're in the first inning. I don't care. Like I will, I will slap you if
Yeah.
you're in my presence and there's a no
Well,
hitter going on.
well, how would you like to be sitting next to your mom at Busch Stadium when she says like in the third or fourth inning, "Oh, so and so has a no hitter going."
Uh,
Like, what do you do then?
well, it's the first time I slapped my mother. I
There you
mean,
go.
I've
Yeah,
never slapped my mother before, but if she talks
yeah.
about the no hitter, yeah, I remember being at Busch Stadium with my son, um, and Kyle Hendricks was on the mound, and
Hmm.
we had driven down the day of the game from where we're at, which is about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and we were driving home that night. So we were going to get back home at 3 o'clock in the morning or something if we
Yeah.
stayed for the whole game. And at one point, it was getting late, and he said to me, "Hey, are we going to leave?" And I was like, are we staying for the whole game? And I had a hard time having that conversation because Hendricks was in the middle of a no-no. And then, of course, we made ESPN when I can't remember who hit the home run off him right over our heads. But
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Nice.
but anyway, that was yeah. So, how do you feel about the jinx? I mean, did you slap your mother?
No, I didn't slap my mom.
Did you yell at her or do
But
anything?
yeah, I feel exactly the way you do. I You
Yeah,
don't talk about it. It's a
yeah,
written rule in baseball. Um, it's just one of those things you don't do, and I think it's pretty much understood by anybody who's a big baseball fan. There's probably some people who poo-poo these superstitions, but that's part of what makes baseball great. And yeah, you must respect the superstition
yeah. I
of
wonder
the
what.
the no hitter jinx.
Yeah, Red Barber, by the way, another great name, but I wonder if that's his real name, Red, or if
Yeah, like
you
Red
know,
Shandy for the
well, it
Cardinals.
makes
Red
makes you
Shandies.
wonder if he's a ginger and they called him Red, or
Yeah.
if that was his real name. But Red Barber, I don't. He deserved to be slapped if that's what he did. I don't want my
Yeah.
broadcasters talking about it either. That bothers me. like broadcasters, if you're listening into the show, don't talk about the no. Nobody wants to talk about the no. Just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting though that he says fifth inning jinx, because then when I go back to page 318 where that would be in the dictionary, that does not exist. Fifth
Hmm.
inning jinx. So eh,
Huh. That's interesting.
who knew?
Red Shandy's name was Fred. His real name was Fred. I don't know
Fred.
about Red Barber, but yeah, Fred.
Is red short for Fred? That's
Is it?
interesting. Or
Is
was
Red?
or was
Is Red?
or was Red
Is
Shaney a redhead? I want to know that. That's what I want to know. I want to
I think
know.
he might have been a redhead
Yeah.
for Fred. Let's see. I don't. I'm not seeing Red being short for Fred. It's got to be a redhead.
You think? Yeah. So
Yeah.
gingers call him red.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I could be. My nickname could have been Red.
Let's see. So, you know what? What's your nickname?
I mean, I've
Wait,
had many
wait.
nicknames back in the day. For some reason, in middle school, there's a guy in high school who just started calling me Pedro as I was walking in the hallways. I
What's
don't know why. I was Pedro.
what
Uh,
what's my favorite nickname for you?
I don't know. Um,
What was the story about the you had a bet? Was it what was it, like
Seth,
Rutheny or
are you
Sethual?
talking
Sethual.
Sethual?
Sethual.
Yeah, about the time I convinced some girl that my full name was, because she asked me if is your full name Seth, or Seth, is your full name Seth, or is it short for something, and I couldn't help it. I just said no, it's, yeah, Seth is short for Sethual, and then another friend of mine, just I could just see her like lean over the table like, are you really messing with this girl right now? And I it's like, about 30 seconds later, I'm like, I'm sorry, my full name is not Sethual, it's Seth. My bad. So
That
she believed me, and who knows if I wouldn't have made that mistake. I don't know. Who knows what would have happened?
you
Like,
should have carried that on for the rest of time.
I should have. I
Like
very much should have.
I,
I don't
I
know.
had I had a business person in our central office in the place where I work who saw my uh, we had an opportunity to go to Wrigley Field, and they had a Hall of Fame thing where there was a kiosk where you could get your picture taken, and you could type in your information, and it
Mm-hmm.
would make a Hall of Fame plaque for you with your picture on it digitally.
Okay.
And I posted
Okay.
that to my social medias, and our business manager, when I got back to school, said to me, I didn't know you pitched for the Chicago Cubs. And I was like, I thought everybody knew that. And I carried
Yeah.
that on for about 4.5 months.
Uh huh.
And every time she would see me, she would say something about it. And, like, why aren't you still playing Major League Baseball? Or, whatever the comments were. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until about whatever I said, 4.5 months later, that I released the truth on that one. And man, she was very happy with me. Let's put it that way. Very happy, because I'd been doing this in front of course, other people. Yeah. I mean, isn't that the best joke? Isn't that the best kind of joke? You
I
know,
think
especially
embarrassing
when
somebody else.
especially when someone has no book on you.
There you go. Way
Ah,
to work that in. Way
I
to work it
appreciate it.
in.
Thanks. Trying to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
vernacular.
If somebody knows you're full of shit, then they're less likely to believe you. Like, yeah. So no, I agree. I agree. I was gonna say something, um, but I forgot what I was gonna say.
Something
Classic.
about Hall of Fame. You're getting to the age. You are getting
Yeah.
to the age.
Um, yeah. It reminded me of a story. But anyway, it's gone now. But
Yeah.
hey, did you know Abby won the lottery? Did you hear about this?
No, no,
My wife
no.
Abby won the lottery.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she came in and she
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I won the lottery." And I said, "Oh my god, fantastic. Where are we going?" And she said, I don't know where you're going, but you got to get out of here. Yeah. So
Really?
I'm gonna have to find a new podcast location home
Wow.
somewhere. And
What your this room's going to be remodeled or something?
no, I my wife is leaving me because she won the lottery. That's the
Oh, my
you
goodness.
see. So I got to get out of the house.
My goodness.
But I wonder what the
You
divorce
gone.
settlement will be
You
because
gone.
I think that's I don't think I signed a prenup. So
How much what was the lottery what I mean if you're comfortable talking about it, what were the
let's
winnings?
see. Let's see. Mega Millions. One, what? Let's see how what she won. Let's see.
We won on the most recent, when it got up to a billion or whatever. We won
Yeah,
we won $10. So we
yeah.
won
Well,
the lottery too.
she. I mean, that was a joke. I hope you know.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. What is the mega? 113 million is what I'm seeing.
oh yeah, yeah.
113 million.
There you go. Hey,
Arizona lottery player won 113 million dollars. Playing the Mega Millions. So there you
you're
go.
in Arizona now?
I'm not.
Oh, I
Hold
thought
on.
you were
Let me
reading
see the
about it.
Missouri.
Okay.
So
All right.
Missouri lottery winner. Let's
Yeah.
see. 331 million in the winning numbers were 7, 15, and 22.
There you go. Only three now. You only have to pick three now? Wow.
That's all it's saying. I don't know.
Hey, how
Check the
you guys
numbers. Let me see the Powerball. Let me see. I don't know what this is.
it's a tax on the poor is what it is. It's a tax on the poor.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah.
You're probably right. You're
Yeah.
probably right.
Yeah. But we should really, now that gambling has infiltrated all aspects of our society, um,
Yeah,
we should
yeah.
really start at one of these upcoming shows. We're going to have to talk about the long-term chances of each of our teams winning the division and winning the World Series.
I wonder if those odds are up right now.
Yeah,
Odds to win the World Series. I wonder who's the favorite, Mike.
right
Do you
now,
think
I
who the
wonder
favorite
who the
is? I
favorite.
wonder who could
I wonder
be.
who it could be.
This, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. They ought to be banished to somewhere.
yeah. Keep on
All
league.
right. So, odds to win the World Series. Do you want to take a guess at where the Cubs rank?
I'm terrible at guessing such things. So no.
Okay. All right. Well, the Dodgers are at number one. They're plus 310. So
What's
these
that?
numbers
What's that mean?
represent how much money you'll win if you bet $100 on the outcome. So you'd win $310 if you bet $100 on the Dodgers to win the
There you go.
World Series. The Yankees are plus 750. The Braves are plus 850. The Phillies are 10-1. The Mets are 10 to
Now
1.
hold on a second. You just
Hmm.
started changing the vernacular. You went from plus 310 plus 750 to 10 to
Hmm.
1. What's the difference?
It's plus 1,000. So 10 to 1 odds, meaning like you'd win 10 times as much. You can say it either way.
There you go.
So $100, but the plus number is how much money you would win if you bet $100. So Orioles 14-1, Astros 17-1, even after they traded Kyle Tucker. San Diego Padres 17-1,
So
Rangers 22-1.
plus 1700 plus
Yes.
2200 plus
Yep.
yeah.
Red Sox 25-1. Cubs. I actually think this is a bargain. I really do because I think the Cubs are going to win the Central. 28-1 to win the World Series.
So now 28 to 1. And what are the odds for the Cubs to win the Central?
Well, let
Because
me get there.
yeah.
The NL Central 2025. Oh, that's the NL East.
What do they call those? Futures? Futures.
Yeah, futures. The Cubs are the favorite to win the Central. Do you know who? Oh my gosh, the Cardinals are tied with the Pirates for finish last in the Central,
Wow. Wow. Who is that?
according to Vegas.
Vegas odds?
The Cardinals are 9-1 to win the Central. The Cubs are plus 110, and they're the clear favorite.
Wow. So I only make $10 if I spend if I bet 100.
No, you would win $110
Oh, okay.
if you bet 100.
All right. See, I
So
do.
you
I don't
still
do a lot
plus
of,
money, but anyway,
I don't do a lot of gambling. Not a gambling
me
man.
me neither. The
I'm
the
a
only
random.
gambling I really do is fantasy football, which by the way, you can check out my fantasy channel if you want to check that out.
Yeah. Football, right?
Fantasy football, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not a
But
gambler. I am a
the Ca-
rambler.
the Cardinals on the other hand are 120 to 1 plus 12,000, which is the lowest they've been. And if you want to absolutely throw money away, you can bet on the Chicago White Sox to win the World Series at plus 50,000. So there you go.
The White Sox.
What a disaster.
So if I said I'm going to put $100 on the White Sox to win the World
You
Series, they came out and just completely turned it around, I'd win. Wow.
$50,000. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yep. Not going to do that.
Nope. That's you talk about the tax on the poor.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Sports betting, the tax on the poor.
There you go. Another tax on the poor.
But I will tell you this: that the fan graphs, sports bet points bet something place that they have over here at the Catfish Bend. That's a pretty nice place to watch a ball game.
Yeah.
You got leather seats with drink holders, and you can get a food delivered to you. A private waitress, big screen TV with 27 other TVs around it, and good place to watch a ball game.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I've played the bet or two down there and hung out with some people, and yeah, it's a good time. Sports books are fun.
Thank you to our sponsor.
Bet responsibly.
Really our sponsor.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No. I am mildly perturbed that you didn't sing the song, but I'll leave it. I'll leave it. It's all right. It's okay. Yeah. It's all right. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. We're shaking off the rust.
We are.
Well,
for sure. And it's been good because we definitely cannot continue to go so long between get-togethers because I've missed you, my friend.
I know. I missed you too, man. Even though you're a Cubs fan, I enjoy talking to you about baseball, and hopefully this shows proof that anything is possible. A Cubs fan and a Cardinals fan can be best of friends, joined together by this great game that we call baseball, the greatest game in the world. So there you go.
Indeed. Oh,
all right.
And there is one more thing.
Okay.
And we would be remiss if we did not. Tip of the hat to Mr. Bob Uecker.
That's
Mr.
right.
Baseball. Could you listen to anyone better on the radio doing a play-by-play of a baseball game than Bob Uecker? And so if I had a Miller Lite, maybe I did have a Miller Lite in this coffee cup. Maybe if I had one, I'd tip that along with my hat to Mr. Baseball. A life well lived, but gone too soon.
Well, he was 90 years old. I mean, I hear you. I hear you.
Life well lived, but gone too soon. I'd love to hear. Would have loved to meet Bob Uecker. Never had a chance to meet him.
Yep. All right. Well, tip of the cap to Bob Uecker. Tip of the cap to you for watching this far into the program. If you liked it, subscribe, click the like button, all that good stuff. And until next time, be good, everybody. And as I'm stumbling to find the thing, because it's been a long time, do we even have this anymore? Yeah, we do. We've got we have it. And until next time, long live baseball.
Long live baseball.
Thank you.
Hey, long live baseball,
Long
baby.
live baseball. Let's go.
Long live baseball.
Thank you.
You got it.
Right now.
Long live baseball.